Reese's Slums and Freud's Mums. I am, as always, your host, Christopher Paul Dugdale, MEDMA. This is Duncanville High School in these United States, and today is February 16th, 2021. And on this date in history, 5 years ago, my favorite nephew, Cash Brass's Aiken, was born. So, very, very smart, good at math already, and can identify all the states by shape. Have a good day. Beat that, people. In a world that's changed greatly, there's a thing called new physics, where people no longer held on to the beliefs that were passed down to them from generation to generation, thinking that the atom was the smallest, simplest particle that existed. We've now found out since you have neutrons, protons, and electrons, and even those are made up of smaller items as well. Marie Curie, she was someone who studied radioactivity. And radium atoms emitted this thing called radioactive energy as they disintegrated. And she saw atoms much differently as small worlds with some type of subatomic particles. So, a whole new way of looking into the world. It's really strange looking at the picture of her. You'll see that it looks like her dress has a little bit of color to her. At least, maybe that's a trick it's playing on my eyes. Anyway, but this kind of ushers in this whole new age of physics. So, welcome everyone. J.J. Thomson and Ernest Rutherford. Okay, they showed that atoms were mostly made up of empty space. Made of subatomic particles. So basically, atoms are not dense. There's a lot of space between protons, neutrons, and electrons. Electrons are spinning around at several times the diameter of the nucleus away from it. Max Planck comes up with quantum theory. Okay, particles did not absorb theory. Particles did not absorb energy in constant streams, but packets of energy called quanta. And this calls into question a lot of things that were brought up in Newtonian physics. During this time, you're able to study things like wavelength, and so you don't have a consistent or constant flow of particles. It's actually quite random, or it might come in waves, such as shown in the diagram to the right. And absorption also has a lot to do with how much is hitting it at a regular basis. Now, time travel and other things explored in the Avengers movies. I don't know that you'll really get a chance to address them in your history class, but let's see. Oh wait, no, I've got to move forward. Albert Einstein, okay, he states that absolute time and space do not exist. All of it is relative to the observer. Okay, for any objects traveling at the speed of light, time slows down relative to a stationary observer, which is called the theory of relativity. Okay, and he also adds space-time in the presence of a large object like a sun. Space and time both curve. Matter and energy related through the formula equals mc squared. So that's where all of that formula comes from. And if I can throw in my little worthless tidbit of time travel information here, I'll make this following statement. Okay, another one of the reasons why time travel is impossible is because of where you would end up. Let's just say that you moved relative to where you are to time. So you go back in time 20 minutes, it would put you on a different location on the Earth at a different altitude, or possibly inside the planet, because the planet is constantly moving around the sun is constantly moving as well, so everything's in constant motion in the universe. And where you were 20 minutes ago, physically, while you might be in the same geographic place on the planet, In reality, in the universe, you are at a much different location, which could be hundreds or thousands of miles away, just depending. Well, I don't even have this information, but let's just say that you're always in constant motion. So that's part of it, and then there's other problems too. So if you ever want to have a nice little conversation about the movement of planets or time travel, come and we'll talk and we'll have a lot of fun. I enjoy these kind of conversations. Okay, so Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov, and he comes up with something called classical conditioning. Classical conditioning has to do with providing a certain type of stimuli to get uh, a repetitive result. In this case, he did an experiment with his. Well, he didn't do an experiment with his dogs. What happened is he used to ring a bell for dinner for his dogs to come. His dogs would hear the sound and come rushing up. They'd come in salivating because they were hungry. And he did this over and over, day after day after day after day. And one day he rang the bell whenever they weren't coming for food, but he saw that they were all salivating even though it wasn't time to eat. And at that point, this salivation, helps him get a better grasp of what classical conditioning is. Okay, it's the same thing as negative and positive reinforcement, doing the same thing over and over again to try and get the same type of response out of someone. Max Weber and Emil Durkheim, they explored interpersonal bureaucratic structures and crowd mentalities on the individual. Okay, basically just how people work together in big structures. So you have several different people on several different levels. Kind of the politics of moving your way up through systems, or maintaining yourself if you want to stay there, and also how crowds work and the impact of all of this on the individual that's included in the system. Weber also believed that charisma could overcome situations, and charismatic leaders are really right around the corner in this class because you have people coming like Hitler, like Franklin Roosevelt, Benito Mussolini, Francisco Franco, Joseph Stalin. A bunch of these people just are such dynamic personalities. They have so much charisma that people want to make them happy and people want to listen to what they're trying to do. Jacob Reese is a different type of storyteller and basically sociologist or studier of people than the other ones we were talking about. And he used a camera to tell the story of poverty. And he goes through New York looking at pictures of people living on the streets, working in factories, working in poverty. And he shows this to Americans and really the world in a book that he puts together called How the Other Half Lives, which is a pictorial view of the world, at least in poverty. And one of the things that you may or may not understand is a lot of people think that certain groups are really evil, and the truth of the matter is most people are so oblivious to what happens outside of their life, outside of their little region that they live in, that they don't understand that anything else exists or that anyone lives in any conditions different than what they live in. And so it's not so much that everyone's evil, it's just that everyone's so focused on their lives and what they're doing, it's harder for them to understand what other people are doing. Henri Bergson was a French philosopher, and he introduced vitalism. Okay, nature or reality could not be divided into analyzable units or discrete parts. Reality can only be grasped intuitively and experienced directly. You cannot tell anyone about anything. They have to experience it for themselves or see it for themselves. And if they don't, then they'll never understand, so it's kind of pointless to try and describe it. Okay? That's the type of message that he has. That basically the world is only real if you've experienced it. You can't really understand the world through someone else's eyes. Hey Siri, how do you pronounce Frederick Nietzsche? Uh, George Sorel combines Bergson and
Friedrich Nietzsche.
Nietzsche's ideas into revolutionary socialism. Okay, anarcho syndicalist. Okay, anarcho has to do with anarchy. They wanted revolution to create socialism, and basically, let's let's take this. Let's shut down all the nations. Uh, every person that's involved in a union, everyone who's skilled, everyone who's unskilled, stops working until uh, a union, like a single union, would come together to govern everyone, okay, and would represent everyone's needs. So it's much more of a worker-based society that he was pushing for, saying that would exist. Now, Freudian psychology and the irrational. Sigmund Freud introduces things like psychoanalysis. This is where the therapist, I don't know what a therapist is, but a therapist is going to unlock people's hidden desires. Okay, their hidden fears and their hidden memories, and a lot of this is something that people suppress and hide so that they can deal with normal life. That's the whole idea of suppressing. Okay, or having to have these things unlocked. And there's a lot of unresolved conflicts that everyone has, and these are called neurosis. Your subconscious could hide unpleasant or painful memories that could be explored through hypnosis or the examination of the dreams. There were a lot of things. He was really the first person to really work into examining what dreams really meant. Okay? Uh, you know, his book was The Interpretation of Dreams. Now, he also talks a lot about the Oedipal complex and how much this, how it really, controls people. Okay? And the simple thing here is it's a hidden desire to have sex with your parents of the opposite sex. So, boys want to have sex with their moms, and girls want to have sex with their dads. Now, Oedipus is a story about a king, okay, and Oedipus. Okay, so Oedipus goes to a fortune teller. He's really concerned. Oedipus is a king, and he's very concerned with his future. So what he does is he goes to a fortune teller and asks the fortune teller how he's going to die. And the fortune teller tells him that your son's going to come, he's going to kill you, and he's going to marry his mom. So Oedipus, hears this and he goes, well, this is easy to take care of. His wife is pregnant, so they'll just not have any more children together. So she's pregnant, though, so whenever the child is born, he tells his guards, take this baby out and kill the baby. So his guards can't handle killing a small baby, so what they do is they go and dump it right in the middle of a village and just kind of leave the baby there. The villagers take and raise the baby. He grows up. He ends up leading a rebellion where they went in to take down the king. They go over the walls. They take the kingdom. He kills the king, and as was the standard at the time, he took the king's spouses to be his spouse, and in that he took his mother as his wife. Once he finds out what has happened, his mom kills herself, and he blinds himself. So, kind of that little feel-good story that everyone was hoping for in the middle of fourth block. Yeah. But it is a Tuesday, so you know what? Maybe this is fitting. So now we're going to talk about something that is also talking about white superiority. Not that we were on the last slide, but anyway. And this is going to do with this triumvirate here. Okay? Herbert Spencer, he uses Darwin's theories of evolution, and he applies them to human society, and talks about how society, the fact that we keep progressing, the reason we're progressing is we are evolving through competition. And basically, the only people that deserve to survive in society, the people that survive are the ones who deserve to survive. This is called survival of the fittest. Okay, so only the fit people in society survive. People that come up with ways to survive whatever, in whichever way that they do. Now, they give out something called the Darwin Award, given to the person that dies in the dumbest way every year. They just kind of recognize that person subtly. They don't go to that house and, give them a trophy. Hey, your dad's dead because he's dumb, or, anything like that. But the first person to win the award was trying to get a free Coke out of a Coke machine. And they tipped the Coke machine over onto themselves. It crushed them and they died. The reason that they really won wasn't just because of tipping the Coke machine over. It was because in their pocket they had about $10 or $6 in change. So, anyway. Frederick von Berhardi. He said that nations were also engaged in a struggle for independence, and he applies social Darwinism to nations. And, again, stating that the only nations that deserve to exist are the ones that do exist because they fought through other people. Well, they fought through other nations, and they're still around. Francis Galton, this is Charles Darwin's cousin, and he makes up a fake science called eugenics. And he said that all of the inequalities that people have are inherited, and that inferior people shouldn't breed. Okay, so and a lot of this is based on race as well, saying that certain races shouldn't breed as well, and so this is his whole idea of eugenics, and people around the world embrace this, especially the people that this would support. And obviously, looking at him, he is the master race. He looks, I don't know, I probably shouldn't make fun of someone's looks, but anyway, what are you going to do? He kind of looks like someone who has evolved from a turtle, So, I guess, if he has a shell, then maybe he is superior, although that would give you back problems too. I don't know. So anyway, Darwinism and social Darwinism. Okay, modernism. This whole idea of making everything modern. So this whole thing of making everything modern, this really splits up Protestant groups, and it hurts church attendance. People are tired of believing in the church. A lot of people don't see any point to it. Okay, and so anti-clericalism, this is a backlash over the close union between state authorities and churches. A lot of churches have been given benefits over the time that normal people aren't. France at one point completely overthrows the church and disconnects from the Catholic Church entirely as well. France substituted civic training for religious training, so if you wanted to work for the government, you had to go in and you had to go through religious training as well in order to get there. French historian Ernst Renan in The Life of Jesus, that was a book, not just the actual life of Jesus, or for you Spanish speakers, the life of Jesus. I could have said life of Jesus or Vida de Jesus, but having fun. So they explain the origins of Christianity as if Jesus were human and the result of history, result of history and not providence. So basically, uh, Jesus was a normal guy, and what he did, the actions that he took, led to it. It wasn't God's master plan. It was just some dude going around doing nice things, and everyone loved him as a result of it. Okay, so it's that kind of story, and not the whole story of Christianity. Pope Leo XIII, uh, he ended the Catholic ban on participation in Italian politics. I'm guessing people were afraid that the church would be blamed for anything that the government did, and that was one of the major reasons that he does that. He also allowed the teaching of evolution as a theory, but not as the only theory. Uh, Rerum Novarum, that is, of course, Latin. This suggested socialism reflected Christianity, but it rejected Marxism as materialist and anti-religious. And they also were against naked capitalism for its treatment of the working class. Naked capitalism completely sorry, I'm trying to think of a good way to term this. Naked capitalism is completely unregulated, and what happens is the majority of people are making nothing, and you've got a few wealthy people making everything. So, he thought that was just as evil as, splitting up everything perfectly equal, that wouldn't cause anything, or that wouldn't make anything better as well. Okay, now, there was a need to try and take care of the poor and the impoverished people, and this was the creation of the Salvation Army. It was started in London, so, once again, another thing that was not created in the United States that I think most Americans think, is all American. It was started by William Booth in 1865. This was to create food centers, shelters for the homeless, and rescue homes for women. This is still a time period where women don't have many rights. In the United States during this time, if a man and woman have a disagreement, the man owns everything, including her clothes, and everything she's ever inherited then belonged to him. Modernism. This rejects all of the traditionary literary and artistic styles, and it tries to create something new. Okay, this 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 change is accompanied by naturalism, and this is something that's going on really more in the literary fields than anywhere else. It's that the material world was real, and that literature should be that should be realistic, address social problems to show an objective understanding of the world. Don't create an idealized world, a perfect society. Don't create one that's horrible. Just show it is actually there. Right now we have a lot of focus in movies on dystopian futures or ideal futures, but the realism of what's really going on, that's not even captured today. But this was a real movement during this time period, which went with modernism and changing what people looked at in the past. A Frenchman by the name of Émile Zola, he showed the destructive influence of hereditary on the lives of characters. Okay, the effects of alcoholism and different environments infected people's lives. Basically, more hereditary traits than anything else. And I think most people are familiar with the fact that if one of your parents is an alcoholic, there's a good chance that you'll be an alcoholic too, just because it's hereditary. Also, artists must analyze and dissect life as a biologist would a living organism. Okay, so it's this whole idea of the scientific method going out into other areas and really looking deep into why things are the way that they are. And, that's something that people have been trying to explain for quite a long time. So let's look at some Russian authors here for a minute. We have Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. Okay, Leo Tolstoy writes a book called War and Peace. Okay, it's a fatalist view of history that everything is about to go to crap and nothing really matters. Okay, history is irrelevant next to love and trust. This is a study of Napoleon's invasion of Russia, and each one of the characters in the novel are analyzed psychologically. Okay. If anyone here is a fan of Seinfeld, which I know that was on well before you were born, probably before your parents got out of high school, which makes me a little bit sad and makes me feel a little bit older. Anyway, in that, Jerry made a joke that the show was War, What Is It Good For? Which is an allusion to James Brown's song. Fyodor Dostoevsky. He writes, by the way, both of these books are extremely long. So don't think it's going to be something you pick up and read in 20 minutes. These are about 1,000 pages each. Anyway, so Dostoevsky raises the question of whether the ends justify the means. The results are worth all the steps that get there, or you can forgive anything that's done in getting to the goal. Okay? A lot of individuals struggling to find meaning in a world of suffering and alienation. And the only thing that can really purify the soul is suffering and faith. Okay. Symbolism and objective knowledge of the world is impossible. It's not the symbolism that you're familiar with. It's basically saying that as an outside source, it is impossible to understand what's going on in the world. W.B. Yeats is an Irish poet, and he's a Protestant who considers himself English. And he wrote poetry on Irish nationalism, and he used symbols from ordinary life to try and help people understand what's going on. I think you'll find that anyone who reads Irish poetry, it's not very uplifting, and it's really, really depressing. And I say that being 1/8 Irish, that, a lot of times my Irish heritage does depress me a bit. But just a bit. Anyway. Maria Rilke is one of the most famous German language poets. She's very lyrically intense. And she rejects all the Christian morals and finds beauty through suffering and death. So if you're looking for something that'll bring a smile to your face or a little bit of cheer into your life, try and avoid Maria Rilke and also all Irish poetry and writings. It's not a lot of happy going on there. You think that the Irish would have gotten more of a sense of humor instead of dark depression with large amounts of drinking and infighting. But what you gonna do? Now, Impressionism. This to me is one of the coolest things. Is it's everything's not very clear. There's like a lot of dots, or it's not. They're not going for photograph quality. They're looking for images and ways of presenting things that are pretty interesting. It captures how the eye sees things, off-center positions. Pictures are made of light and shadow. Whenever there's portraits done, it's not clear images of the faces, just something just a little bit off. You can also through looking at something see other images in the background that some people may or may not be able to see. I mean, just looking at the Monet on the top left, and by the way, I've got a more of an official description, but just kind of first glance of it, you can see the boat, but then you see other boats in the background. On the left hand side, you see a boat with several sails, but then on the far ends, you can see some boats that are steamboats with the smokestacks. In the background, I like to believe that I see a few windmills as well. So, anyway, I just really like it because to me, it opens it up for interpretation, and instead of just trying to figure out what the author's trying to do, or not the author, but the artist is trying to do, I don't know, you can try and look and find a little bit more of something else in there for you. I don't know. I'm weird that way. On the top left-hand side, that's Impression Sunrise, a famous piece from Claude Monet. This shows light, water, and atmosphere. Okay. Monet was famous for wanting to depict things like water lilies, haystacks. He does Notre Dame at several different times of the year. Anyway, I'm going to keep on going here. Renoir, I have one example of his work here. This is the dance at Les Moulins de Galets, or luncheon of the boating party. And this is just middle class scenes of urban life and glimpses of reality. Nothing really interesting or fascinating, just a bunch of people going about their daily lives. Berthe Morisot, this is a female impressionist, and she does a work here called Young Girl at the Window. And it's said here that it demonstrates that women are much more delicate than men. And I will say this, it does look like she's pretty delicate here. Anyway, Edgar Degas, he painted things like ballet studios. I have one of his portraits over there to the left. You see the way that he uses light and dark, depending on what's coming in from there. It's pretty simple. He doesn't use the space as you would expect with people filling the entire picture. Instead, they're kind of off to the side. Again, this is really, Impressionism, a fine example of Impressionism. Mary Cassatt is an American, and she shows domestic scenes. There's a mother bathing her child. So, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and keep on moving. Yeah. So we made it to yet the end of another day. I hope everyone's doing well. I'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day, and don't cocaine and don't AIDS. And please don't COVID.